What is up, everybody, whoever's watching live or later on? Welcome to Tech Backstage. This is your temporary host for today, Moby, and today I'm going to be talking about your forever host for Tech Backstage, Eddie Hudson, founder and CEO of Development. Eddie, how are you?
Good, Moby. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm really impressed. When we were talking about this, you were like, our first podcast, let's live stream this. That's
Yeah,
really dope.
yeah. Let's dive in, man. I'm a production nerd, so I like it's always go big or go home for me, right? Like I can't just dive in and do the podcast on Spotify. We got to like live stream to everywhere we can, and use all the latest tools and technologies because that's just what I'm about, man. I can't do anything 80%.
I like it. It's also
Yeah,
much more fun that way.
yeah,
And congrats on starting this podcast. I know you'll have a lot of great episodes, but I really want to focus this episode on people hearing your story. So
yeah.
before like development the company and before development as a career, you were a full-time musician touring nationally. When did you start playing music?
I mean, since I was a kid, my mom had me in. We went to music school when I was a kid. I think it was probably like the alternative to daycare. And I remember, and my mom will probably always tell anybody who wants to hear this story. But when we did it, I wanted to do the Star Spangled Banner, like in our presentation, and I was just like absolutely adamant that I do it. And I'm sure there's photos floating around there somewhere of me singing that. And I've never really been that great of a singer. Like I can always do like I'm a solid background singer
Mhm.
if you need some vocals. But anyways, so like we've been doing music ever since I was a kid. We took piano lessons. In high school, I played saxophone in the jazz band, and then a buddy of mine who will be on a later episode of this show talked me into playing bass for his rock band. So that was everything for us. You know what I mean? Like we wanted to be rock stars. I grew up in Spokane, Washington, and 3.5, 4 hours away from Seattle in the '90s, and it was grunge. It was Nirvana, and it was Alice in Chains, and it was Pearl Jam, and like that was the life we lived. We had Nirvana T-shirts every day at high school, and that's what we wanted to do. So that's what we did, and that just transpired. That's what I thought I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And so in my 20s, I moved to California and started working on the dream. We always sarcastically say live in the dream. But yeah, that's it goes back as far as I can remember, for sure.
And so while you were in California and you were touring, I know you always tended to like tech as a kid. When did it kind of switch for you, like thinking about tech as something professionally while you were doing music?
Years later, like we actually, I guess the first thing I'll say is that um, even when we were playing music, right, we were always about the latest and the greatest. You know what I mean? Like we wanted to have, Marshall half stacks, and we wanted, I wanted the Ampeg bass stack, and we always wanted to play Fender because that's what Kurt Cobain played, and so we are always about using the latest and greatest technology. I know that doesn't necessarily translate to what we do today, but we always had this, hey, we always want to use the best, right? And so um years later in my 20s, I was actually touring in a couple bands, nobody that anybody on this podcast has ever heard of, by the way. But we did do a couple national tours, and I'd always been interested in technology, going back to being a kid. I used to rip apart cassette tape decks, and which maybe some people on this, you know, listening in live probably don't even know what those are. That was like even pre like CD players, portable CD players. But I used to like just rip them apart and see what's inside of them. And my mom was always like, "Hey, make sure you put that back together when you're done." And I'd always be like, "Yeah, of course." And by the time I'd get to the end, I wouldn't know how to put it back together. But it's always been something that's kind of been back of mind for me. And so it wasn't till I got to Austin, in 2010, I moved to Austin, and Austin was kind of converting into a tech hub. And I'd always done web stuff on the side for fun, going back to, uploading HTML sites to GeoCities and programming games into TI-83 calculators. We didn't really, realize that it could be a career path. And, again, we were so focused on playing music at the time. I didn't really focus on it till I got to Austin, and then started seeing everything that was happening in the Austin tech scene, back in 2010, as it started to transition into what it is today. And I think that's when I really realized, like, oh, hey, this could be like something that I want to do for the rest of my life. So yeah, I mean, I'd say Austin 2010, 2012-ish.
Yeah. No, I moved to this to the city at that time too, and I think I got involved in tech 2012, 2013, and it's so interesting how much we're shaped by the environment and the people around us. And that was it's still a great time to be in Austin.
Yeah.
But that was such a transformative time of being like, oh, everybody here wants to be tech entrepreneur. Maybe I should
Yeah.
look into it. And now we are like a decade later, and it's tech entrepreneurship.
Yeah, for sure. And when I first moved to Austin, I was the production manager for Emos when it was still on the corner of 6th and Red River.
Mhm.
Most anybody who lives in Austin these days might be familiar with the Emos that's over on East Riverside. And I actually put together, there was a ton of people on the project, so I'm not saying like I did everything, but I did design and work with local companies in Austin to put together the lighting and sound systems. And I have pictures on my Facebook you can go see. I'm sure that of us like actually constructing Emos East, which what we called it back in the day. Now it's just Emos, but that was back before there was condos on Red River. That was like now there's condos all over the place, and so it was a different world back then, man.
Different world.
Yeah.
Different world. And so you kind of moved to Austin, and then you started getting more into tech. What was a point in your journey in tech that you were like, okay, like I guess I'm gonna start a business?
Yeah. So I guess like taking a couple steps back from that, because I think we jumped from full-time musician to tech founder pretty quick there.
Yeah.
In Austin, what ended up happening was I'd actually transitioned out of being a full-time musician. I was never that great of a musician. I was a good, like a solid bass player, but I have engineer brain, so I'm always very objective about things like how do you get from point A to point B as fast as possible, and what's the actual solution. And so, being a musician, you're supposed to have like kind of a creative brain. I'm less creative and more like solutions oriented. But at the time, I was working at Emos and I was mixing bands at Emos, and I really liked mixing bands. There's something about mixing bands live that I really enjoy. The studio, you can sit there and you can tweak settings and just like work on stuff and nerd out on it for weeks, months. There's people that just sit in a studio 24 hours a day and play around with it. But there was something about mixing bands live where it's like you have a finite amount of time to actually go in and make it sound as good as possible, and then they're done and you move on. And I always like that. So I started mixing sound at audio or at Emos, and then I actually started getting calls to go work for a local sound company, and that kind of went up to doing some tours. I actually was fortunate enough to tour internationally for a little bit there. But the one thing that I was always more interested in, as being an audio engineer, is you do go in and you're just a lot of like fixing circuit boards and, soldering cables and things like that. It's really related to electrical engineering as a career path. And I liked it. I had a lot of fun, and but I was always more drawn to software. As we started doing larger tours, everything was driven by digital systems. Like we used Dolby Lake to drive large arena format sound systems, and we used digital consoles by Avid, which is the maker of Pro Tools, which is a pretty popular recording
Mhm.
software. But everything was digital, and I was really interested in how all that stuff worked and how it went together. And then so I kind of just started diving into back into developing, and I just kind of got hooked on it. And that's kind of where I like started going down the rabbit hole towards becoming a full-time software engineer. So it was a long journey. I ended up working at a SaaS company for a little bit, and then at a technology services company out of New York. And then I had the opportunity, because my wife's from Mexico, to start, we were like, hey, I think we can do a better job. And I think we can, I think we can do it affordably. And so we had the ability, like right out of the gate, to just like start a multinational company, which not a lot of people have the ability to do. And so, we spun up the company in Austin and then also in Monterrey, Mexico. And, just kind of blew up from there, man. It's been a wild ride for the last 2.5 years.
Yeah, 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Based on our conversations earlier, like you've gone through a lot of growth, and when you think about the people on your team, the conversations that you're having with people all around the world, whether it's customers, potential partners, like that's 2.5 years is a short time for a lot to
Oh,
happen.
yeah. Yeah. No, it's, in the business world, 2.5 years is nothing. And, I remember even doing the first forecast for the company, and we were looking at the numbers, and we are like, man, if we could hit those numbers, that would be awesome. And we just blew past it. And at every turn. And Adriana, who's, my better half and also our COO, she was actually in school for international business at the time. And I just remember, we were living in a 1-bedroom apartment, and like the living room was literally development headquarters. And so she'd be studying at the dining room table, I'd be working over in the corner on some anything, whatever I could get my hands on that people would pay me to do. And it was funny, because a lot of the stuff that she was going through in her international business courses, we were kind of going through at the same time with the company. It's like branding, and we're like, oh yeah, we got to do a brand, right? And so, at the time, we were called like Coded Monterey, which is, obviously a name that I came up with, because I'm not creative at all. And so, she helped me sit down and brainstorm development. And but anyways, it was just so interesting, because we were, she was kind of going through all this stuff in her international business courses. She'd already started a company with her sister. It's still doing fairly well. Not fairly well. It's doing, they switched to making face masks in the pandemic, so they're crushing it. But, so she already had some of this business background, but a lot of this stuff we were learning on the fly. It's like neither one of us had started a tech company before. And so it was every single day just learning new stuff, and figuring out how to register a business in Mexico, and, hiring the attorneys to do it, because there's not apps like there is in, you don't have LegalZoom or Zen Business. Actually, we use Zen Business. They're out of Austin. So
Yeah,
quick
they
shout out
are.
to those guys that for registering the company. But, um, you don't have that stuff here. Like, we started the process in like January of 2020. Like, we didn't finish registering the company in Mexico till March of that year. And then, in the US, by comparison, like, I, paid the, $300 or $400, and we had it like within a week or so, is, just everything, IRS filing and everything. So yeah, man, it's been a crazy ride. And every step of the way has just been a learning process. And now we have a team of 50 people that work for us full time. Incredible group of people. Every single day, you just see them coming in and doing incredible things with technology, coming up with solutions that you never would have thought of. We have just some of the brightest minds out there right now working on some of these apps. But yeah, man, it's been crazy.
It's been a journey, and you mentioned this right at the start of the podcast, and that kind of relates to what you just said, which is you just don't do something 80%. Starting a business is a very difficult decision,
Yeah.
because you make scenarios in your mind about opportunity cost and everything else. Do you feel like you've slept at all in the last 2.5 years?
Not a lot. Like, I'm not much for staying up late, but there's definitely a lot of restless nights. We're going through it right now. We have some stuff that we're working on that we can't really talk about quite yet on the podcast, but I'm excited to announce it soon. Um, but it's not even stress. I think a lot of it's excitement, right? A lot of it's excitement for the unknown. We know that we're doing, as a company, we're doing a great job, but we know that we care about our clients and about the work that we do, and it's very personal for us. And we strive for excellence every day. And because of that, it's an exciting thing to get up every day and come to work, because it doesn't feel like work.
Mhm.
It feels like we're making a difference for businesses, and it feels like we're making a difference in people's lives that work for us as well. So, but yeah, a lot of sleepless nights, and there's just there's so much happening. Like you said, we don't do anything 80%, and this company grew 438% in its first year, and then this year, we're on target for 150% growth. And sorry for everybody that's listening in, but we'll probably try and push for 200% growth. So, anyways, like, and those are exciting numbers, right? That's a lot of people would be happy with 20 or 30% growth year over year, and we're in the triple digits right now. So it's an exciting time to be here.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons why that's happening is in our first conversations ever, maybe the first or second, something that really stood out for me was when you were talking about the company. It was like our main focus is good work
Yeah.
for our customers, and I think regardless of whatever business you're in, if you help your clients be successful, that's going to end up growing the business because of word of mouth
Yep.
spreads, and just organic marketing really does it that way. And
Yep.
you mentioned being excited about stuff. I know that over the next few episodes and for the rest of this podcast, you're going to be talking to a lot of people in big tech companies, consulting companies. They're going to be marketers, technologists about things that they're excited about and
Yep.
what they're working on. Um, what technology trends are you excited about? I think about you're like, oh, that's
Yeah.
cool. What is Eddie Hudson interested in?
So, I very much started out as a web developer. So I was, React, a lot of Node.js, Java, anything JavaScript, right? Obviously HTML, CSS, but we pretty much do everything front end in React nowadays. And that's very much how we started as a company, was focused on web services, right? It's actually in the name, development web services. That also goes to show like how fast we've grown as a company, because we do so much more than just actual web applications now. But the things that are exciting to me are, AI, machine learning. We're working on a really cool machine learning project right now. Obviously because of NDAs, we can't talk exactly about what it's about, but really cool, using NLP and actual, which is natural language processing, to, extract information from places and
Mhm.
use it. And we're also doing some Web3 projects. We're working with a really cool startup called Montiel. They're founders out of Argentina, actually. And we just actually released our first NFT collection of the year. So we're really excited about Web3 and blockchain technologies. We're really excited about AI and machine learning. Really excited about the metaverse and AR, VR. And what I'm most excited about isn't the for example, with blockchain, I'm not the NFT space. A lot of people are doing this art stuff right now, but where I really see it having the most impact is the real world applications. Ticketing for events, things like that you can actually use on a day to day basis. Same thing with AR, VR. I saw this really cool article about how they're using VR headsets for senior citizens that are in nursing homes, to actually like be able to get out and go see like a play or something. Because they're obviously limited to being at the home. And like, so the actual real world applications, not the um not just kind of like the fun stuff, and like actually getting down to, hey, how can we make the better world a place with these technologies?
Mhm.
And I mean, obviously, like I'm very much a gamer. I love to play F1 2021, 2022 soon. I'm a big racing sim guy, and a lot of the guys on the team and girls, we're a big Call of Duty house, Modern Warfare. So we do love the gaming aspect of it as well. You know what I mean? But I really am excited to see how these new technology trends are actually going to come out and affect the day to day, of people's lives, and hopefully for the better.
Absolutely. Sorry, you said something. What are NFTs? I'm kidding. uh,
We gonna do this?
no, I'm not gonna do this. And what you said about real world application, I really see it. For a client right now, we're talking about an NFT strategy,
Yeah.
and something that, I mean, every time I say this, every time I say its name, I feel like two people with a pitchfork will come at me, but like I really like Gary Vee's recent LinkedIn post, which is just like every company has a social media strategy.
Yep.
Uh, a lot of companies would be like have an NFT strategy, and I think those real world applications, as they make more sense or as people invent them, are going to be super interesting. And it's a wild west. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the cool things, like you're talking to a client right now. When I was at South by Southwest, I went to the Porsche Unseen.
Mhm.
Um, you know, what do they call those things? Pop-ups.
Activations.
Activations. That's the word we're
Yeah,
looking for. So I went to
yeah.
the Porsche Unseen activation, and there was a female race driver there, and she was talking about how they were working to sponsor her career using NFTs. And I thought that that was one of the coolest actual applications, because sponsoring a racing career is expensive and you need a lot of money to do it. And she'd originally approached a creative agency about, selling t-shirts, and they came, helped her come up with the NFT idea. But what was cool about it is that, she was being marginalized in that space, for being a female race driver. Kind of her story was basically, hey, people were, just like saying, hey, go out and have fun with this. And she's like, I'm a race car driver. Like, I'm going to go out and try to win. And so she really felt like she wasn't represented well in the sport. And she actually had another opportunity for sponsorship and turned it down because of the NFT sponsorship schema that she came up with the creative agency. And it was just so cool to see somebody sponsoring their career using NFTs and like, actually seeing a real world application like that. I thought was just one of the coolest things that I saw at South by Southwest this year.
100%.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. I think when the worlds of technology, creativity, art, and I mean, this thing, we do not want to make this episode of NFTs.
No, of course not.
Yeah. But what's really interesting I found about that and any other thing, they've existed for a while. A lot of people knew about it. I didn't until a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And now it's become this big thing. And it's really interesting. Okay, this came out, took over. Social media took 5 to 8 years to take over. What's the thing that comes next, or the thing that comes next after that? Where it comes up and everybody's like, oh, wow, we got to get on this. And I think that's one of the most interesting things about tech, that just the evolution of technology is not linear at all.
Yeah. No.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, and what's important to understand is, like, keep in mind, man, NFTs have been around since forever. You know what I mean? Like, you can think about your tickets for concerts, like your actual physical tickets, like those are NFTs. You can think about, cars technically could be an NFT. Basically it's a one of one, right? Or, I guess you could do limited series. But what I'm saying is that a lot of the things that are happening right now in tech have been around for a while. Look at the metaverse. We've been making 3D games with Unity and Unreal Engine for years now. I think for decades. And so it's not necessarily that, what, like, any of this stuff is necessarily like new and revolutionary. Like, and this might be an unpopular opinion, but it's how they're actually approaching it and what, how they're using technology to actually create these things and create these new spaces. And NFTs are basically a digital version of what we used to have as like an actual physical hard copy of something. And so it's really about how how we as humans are shaping the future and our experience, our existence using technology. So like that's kind of the way I see it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not necessarily brand new. Like, these are things that have been around for years. It's just we're reshaping everything using using technology.
I think that's going to be a really good angle whenever people are listening to the podcast right now, because when you will interview people for the rest of this podcast, you're going to ask questions about this, and it's going to be an interesting mix of nerding out about technology, learning about cool stuff, and also hearing people's stories, whether they're in big tech companies, they're starting their own company, they're more in marketing. What are you most, I mean, this is your podcast, what are you most excited about when it comes to having conversations with people, live streamed or not, down the line?
Yeah, I mean, I just, I obviously have my own opinions, and I spend a lot of time in this office because this is where I work, and I also play. Like, I have my PlayStation 5 over there, and I have my guitars over here in the corner, and so, like, I spend a good amount of time in my office, and obviously my opinions are my own, right? And I'm really excited to just talk to people and see what they think is coming. Like what's the roadmap that they're using for their company? How do they think that technology and the trends in technology and the changes that are coming, how is that going to change their, for example, their product roadmap? Or how is that going to drive R&D? How is that making a positive effect in the region, in the world? Because we may not just talk to people in the U.S. So how is technology driving trends where they live? I spend a lot of time in Mexico. I'm here right now. And there's been a huge amount of unicorns that have started to come out of Mexico because there's all of these startups starting to pop up here and really starting to challenge and reinvent the way that things are done in Mexico. Keep in mind, Mexico is, we always say about 10 years behind the US in technology. And we were just talking about how the company, how it took 3 months to spin up the company in Mexico because it's a very manual process. Like you literally have to go to a notary public to sign the final documentation with a pen, right? Like that's the way it works here. Yeah, like right here, pen on paper. And it's very much that's the way things work here right now. And so it's not just about how technology is affecting certain companies or how it's affecting certain individuals. I mean, it could be affecting countries on a wide ranging scale. And so it's like that's the things that I'm excited to talk about and to see what other people are doing with technology. Like I know what we're doing, and I know what our clients are doing with technology, but I'm just so excited to talk to people about, hey, what do you think's coming? Like what are the trends that you see are coming and how are you guys planning around that? And how do you plan to implement that stuff? And, what sort of impact do you think it's going to have? Whether it's just, like, I don't want to just say social, but, like even like, on people's health or, mentally, there's so many different ways that technology interacts and with our lives these days. Like think about cell phones, for example. Before the iPhone came out, yeah, we had texting and voice calls, but I didn't ever think it was going to be the key to my car. So that like it's just it pops up in so many different places, right? It's just crazy. It's mind blowing.
That's true. My favorite part about talking about tech and how it's changed this is how we discriminate against people when they have an Android. It's a green text.
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly. 100%. Like I was just, there's a group, I have an executive group in Austin, Backstage. Shout out to any of those guys if they're going to be listening in, but great group of people. And we had a lady named Deb Gabor come speak recently. And that was one of the examples that she gave was, cause I'm an Apple user, avid, obviously as a developer. I'm very tied to my MacBook Pro and to my iPhone, but yeah, when that green bubble pops up, it's kind of like, oh, not an Apple user, huh? And no offense to any Android users on the podcast listening in. I know there's some people listening in. Nothing against you guys. It's brand loyalty, right? And so it's just like you said, it just pops up everywhere in our lives, right? It's like just seeps in everywhere.
It does. It does. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing this episode when it comes out on the actual podcast. Everybody watching live, hello. Thank you for
Hi, y'all. Thanks for tuning in.
Boom. Yeah, we've got comments from LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch. Fantastic. We'll get to them after this. But Eddie, thank you so much for joining me on your podcast. And I'm looking forward to hearing the next podcast.
Thanks, man. Thanks for taking the time to host and yeah, man, for setting this up with us.
Oh,
we appreciate it. And thanks to everybody that tuned in. Oh, we got one Android lover down there for sure. But yeah, thanks to everybody that tuned in for the first time and looking forward to seeing you guys on the next one.
boom.
Bye, y'all.
All right.